Welcome back to this abbreviated version of the Magnolia Media Podcast. I'm your host, per usual, Jonathan M. Ruggiero. And I really want to promote my Instagram account for a moment. We have been growing, really growing. I'm surprised. I literally started this thing from scratch, and within just a few weeks, we have grown to 550, 600, 650, somewhere in there, followers. People who jump on when I do lives. Often I do a live almost every day, usually early afternoon hours, and we talk about, politics, obviously, what's going on in the world, and we select a film of the night. And just in case you're curious what the film of the night is, because we're as interested in arts and the cult and culture as we are in anything else, is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the film that officially announced the return of Robert Downey Jr. to the main stage in Hollywood. Now, let's jump right into it and get started on what we're really here for, and that is politics and the candidacy of Kamala Harris. How is it going? Is she improving on Joe Biden and what Joe Biden was doing in the polls? Yes, across the board, from Arizona, where she still has a significant, she's a significant underdog in Arizona. She was, of course, tasked for whatever reason to deal with the imaginary border crisis that isn't actually happening. And that makes it difficult in a state like Arizona. Perhaps she'll choose Mark Kelly as a VP candidate for that very reason, although I am leaning towards her choosing Shapiro, Governor Shapiro. Josh Shapiro has two things going for him. One, he's been an extremely effective governor of what is, in my mind, a blue state. A state where Democrats have to win Allegheny County, Pittsburgh. They have to win Westchester County, the suburb of Philadelphia. They have to run the score up in Philadelphia. Erie would be nice to win. They win State College, and they need to run the score up there. And they win Harrisburg. They have to run the score up there. That's the battleground state of the three battleground states that are really battleground states, where you really have to campaign in all four corners of the state. Again, from Pittsburgh to Philly to Erie, which is up in the northwest corner. Down in the southwest corner, you've got Pittsburgh. On the east side, you've got Westchester County, Philadelphia. In the center of the state, you've got State College and Harrisburg. So there's a lot going on in Pennsylvania, and I think Shapiro might be the best pick. However, if you really want to tie this whole thing up and put a bow on it, Mark Kelly and Arizona, that's a tough one, as Mark Kelly has been an excellent senator from the state. And Ruben Gallego does appear to be winning that state because he's running against lunatic Kerry Lake. And his coattails may extend upward to the presidential race and help drag Kamala Harris across the line. I have not looked at polls in Nevada, but I am going to run you through some polls. The polls, which we really hate here so much at the Magnolia Media Podcast, because polls, they're just not great indicators. And let me say this first. So much for the post-RNC momentum that the Republicans were supposed to get, that Trump expected. Then he made a huge mistake, and a mistake that has become apparent over the last few days in the selection of JD Vance as his vice presidential pick. JD Vance, who, of course, was anti-Trump, as anti-Trumpers get on the right of the political spectrum in the United States, until 4 or 5 years ago when he was getting ready to run for Senate in the state of Ohio, where he knew he would need Trump's endorsement. And in the process, we lost one hell of a good Democratic congressman. Apparently, Hulk Hogan isn't staying with people. Surprise, surprise. Terry Bollier, who plays Hulk Hogan on television, showed up as Hulk Hogan at the RNC convention. Of course, the image at this point of him tearing his shirt off to reveal a Trump shirt underneath it. So tear one shirt off to show off another shirt, and talk about Hulkamaniacs and Trumpians, going wild for Donald Trump. Well, that's going to be drowned out by the rational people in this country the way it's looking now. And more on JD Vance. JD Vance is literally the worst pick for vice president, the most unpopular VP pick in U.S. history. The average bump for a VP pick after a convention is 19 points to the positive. Plus 19. JD Vance, -6. -6. Maybe Trump should have just picked Hulk Hogan, and then this whole thing could have been solved. We could have had stupid on top of stupid instead of one guy pretending to be stupid, completely controlled by Peter Thiel and not Donald Trump, who compared Trump to an opioid, to an opiate, when he's attached to Appalachia, as I am attached to Appalachia, and the opioid crisis here is real and has even affected me. So that's dark. That's getting dark. So what happened? What happened to all of this momentum that was supposed to come on the back of the RNC? Oh, and just a few days before that, their candidate was shot at. And, someone I enjoy watching, I think he is involved with the Midas Touch Network now, is Texas Paul Schroeder. Wears the Stetson cowboy hat, drinks his coffee, sits on the front porch and makes his videos. He really is a charming guy. He made the point that anyone whose ear was nicked, just nicked that much, doesn't bleed as much as Trump bled. He talked about Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield had his ear bitten off, a great portion of his ear bitten off, about half of it, by Mike Tyson in 1997, and then spit out on the ground, and he didn't bleed as much as Donald Trump bled. Now, I'm not, throwing out some wild conspiracy theory here. What I am saying is that we were once talking about the idea, the possible fact that Donald Trump has had a stroke in the past year or so. And that, of course, that was covered up by his campaign. And, of course, he's never given us a legitimate records of his healthcare checkups. We have no idea what kind of shape he's actually in, other than morbidly obese, terrible diet, terrible sleep habits, insanity, which can't be good for the brain. And now it appears he might be on blood thinners, because to get an ear to bleed that much, one would have to be on blood thinners, or at least it's an educated guess. Thank you for that, Texas Paul Schroeder. If you happen to run across our podcast during your busy day of drinking coffee on the front porch. And of course, that's not a knock against you. If that's what I could do, that's absolutely what I would do. Sit on the front porch and enjoy my coffee. And it seems to suit Texas Paul Schroeder just fine. So, as Kamala Harris came along and stole the momentum, she's also stolen all these leads Donald Trump had in swing state polls, with the exception of Arizona, where he still leads, according to an Emerson poll, which we know Emerson to be a far right-wing poll that overestimates Republican turnout, that overestimates Republican strength in a state that has, for all intents and purposes, turned blue. It is no longer the Arizona of Barry Goldwater or even John McCain. It's a Democratic state that has finally caught on now that, it's geographically so close to our most Democratic state, our most important state, California, which I'm pretty sure we're going to win. And it's 54 electoral votes. So she instantly jumped ahead of Trump in the national polls, 44 to 42, and then 48 to 44. And we're going to get into that in more detail in a moment. But first, maybe Trump should stop fantasizing about winning New Jersey. We heard that out of him when he had a rally again in New Jersey and talked about 107,000 people showing up, or 82,000 showing up in South Carolina. That many people don't show up for a University of South Carolina football game, an SEC game versus another SEC team, much less to hear some bloated loudmouth carry on about whatever, shark attacks, being electrocuted, having dinner with Hannibal Lecter, and how he wants to have dinner with you. He wants to have you for dinner. I mean, what in the hell is going on with Donald Trump's brain? That should be a serious question. It should be a serious question. What is going on? So, let's do a little digging. Now, keep this in mind. The next couple of polls I'm about to read you are from Emerson, so take them with a grain of salt. And, you can also give the Democratic candidate about 2 points on every one of those because, again, it's a far right-wing poll. Let's see. Oh, no. Right off the bat, they've got Trump up just 1 point, which obviously is basically a tie. And that's among registered voters, not likely voters. And Wisconsin, 47-47 among registered voters. Georgia, Trump, +2, 48-46. With only 800, you only polled 800 people? When only 800 people, registered voters, not likely voters, even answer your stupid request for a poll? I mean, who wants to be involved in these things these days? I don't know of anybody. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. We go to Georgia. In Georgia, Trump is only up 2 points. That's a state where he should be up 10 points, and he's up only 2. And instead, he's worried about New Jersey. New Jersey, a solid blue state. And again, only 800 registered voters were polled by Emerson. So again, take that with a grain of salt. We've already touched on Trump leading by 5. Again, according to Emerson, Emerson's the only one who's done any polling on this, and only 800 people were polled. And again, they were only registered voters, not likely voters. That's what we want to see. And we will see that over the next couple of weeks. We'll see real polls done by trusted pollsters that get it closer to correct. None of these polls are saying who's going to win or lose. They're just gauging their margin of error. In Pennsylvania, among registered voters, a Morning Consult poll, 46-45 Harris. That's a big change. 46-45 Harris in Pennsylvania. The Change Research, who the hell has ever heard of them? 43-44 Trump. Again, basically a tie. Big Village. Who in the hell is Big Village polling? They've got this thing a tie. And finally, we get to Ipsos. Ipsos, important. A real poll. 42 Harris, 38 Trump, 8 Kennedy. Why is Kennedy still being polled when the man has come out in public and asked for a job in a possible future Trump administration? Why are we still dealing with this worm, this brain worm, RFK Jr., when we know he's nothing more than a Trump dark horse? That's it. He's giving people someone else to vote for back when there were two 80-year-olds in the race, but now we have a 59-year-old against an 80-year-old, a man who will be an octogenarian if he were elected president, a man who has obviously had a stroke, a man who is completely out of his mind, a man who really isn't a man at all. He likes to call everyone else vermin, or how they're poisoning the blood of our country. I'll ask you this. What politician has poisoned the blood of our country and acted like vermin more than Donald Trump? He's poisoned our discourse. And he's got Republicans shooting at Republicans. When do we say, look, we don't like this Hitler-esque language that you're using, but if we're going to label someone vermin, perhaps you're the vermin. Perhaps you're the one poisoning the blood of our country, as you have created a cult of about 25% of the nation that will excuse away anything. I even heard Trump supporters brag about hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein and going on the, quote, Lolita Express. Again, the Lolita Express to Jeffrey Epstein's private island on his private jet. What a disturbing and unnerving concept. The Lolita Express? Serious? So we're talking about people who not only support but endorse the sexual depravity of a man like Donald Trump. His sexual assaults, his sexual abuse, his little peep show when he used to go backstage at the Miss Universe pageant and see women naked because he wanted to. Because at that moment in time, they were his employees and he could go get a private peep show. That's what we're dealing with. That's the type of madness, the type of sickness that a certain percentage of the United States, knowingly or unknowingly, wants to unleash on the rest of the United States, including Project 2025, all 900 pages of it, which is something endorsed by JD Vance, even more than it's being endorsed by Donald Trump, whose supporters and staffers wrote the damn thing. It's insane. It's wanting to take us back to a time when women didn't have a right to vote, when African Americans couldn't vote, when essentially this nation was at its lowest point, with the exception of the very, very rich. Talking about, of course, the 1920s and the 19-teens, the robber baron era of the United States. That's what Trump wants because he thinks he can profit from it. He thinks he'll do great in a robber baron era of American politics, of American life, because they'll owe him for bringing it back. And now the $45 million promised by Elon Musk, because Elon Musk makes a lot of promises that aren't worth dirt. They aren't worth spit. So pay him no mind whatsoever. Now he says he never promised that $45 million at all. He didn't promise it at all, $45 million. Because Elon's money is all in form of stock. Well, it's paper. It's just money being moved around on spreadsheets. It's not money. That's Elon Musk. That's what you get when you partner with an Elon Musk, a grown man who can't grow a beard, who can't stop impregnating women, who has, well, little to no relationship with his, 10, 11, 12 children, and of course has one trans daughter who will have nothing at all to do with him. And we've allowed this type of person, and this includes Jeff Bezos, even though Bezos owns the Post and seems to be more aligned with left-leaning causes than right-leaning causes, although I'm not really sure anymore, as he spends all of his time with Miss Sanchez, his new girlfriend, post Mackenzie Bezos, who is using her considerable weight and considerable wealth to bolster charities around the world, and she's not even asking for name recognition. This is something touched on often on the Pivot podcast with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. Add it to your daily or weekly diet of podcasts. It comes on twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. Check it out. It's a great one. I believe it's a Vox Media podcast brought to you by the New York Magazine. I am not 100% sure on that. I do know it's a Vox Media podcast, and it's a good one as they talk tech business, politics, and really whatever's going on that particular day. So, we've gone through the list of polls that have been released thus far. We got essentially a 1-point race in the swing states, or a tie, or it's a lead for Kamala Harris. We can safely say Michigan, which is blue from top to bottom at this point, is likely going to go, would have even gone for Joe Biden, and is likely going to go for Kamala Harris. North Carolina immediately improved. Pennsylvania, immediate improvement. And I expect those numbers to continue to grow because of the American people don't know her all that well. 15% of Americans say they don't even know who she is. Well, they're about to learn because the full court press is about to be put on by the Harris campaign. And again, the excitement of choosing a vice presidential candidate who's going to get a plus 19 bump out of it, because it's not going to be dead-eyed JD Vance, who, by the way, I wear a beard, but if I were elected president, or if I were a vice presidential nominee, or if I were in the United States Senate, I might leave a little goatee, just a little bit of facial hair, but I certainly would not wear a beard to cover up my 3 or 4 chins, JD Vance. We can still see the chins, JD. We know they're there. We know you've got kind of that round, fat head. I've got one too. So stop trying to disguise it with a really crappy beard. I mean, it's better than Elon Musk, but not by much. Again, if you missed my live today, and I know the audiences don't overlap, the movie of the night for tonight, since we're transitioning away from the hardcore stuff, the politics, the polls, the rigor, all of the nastiness that gets thrown back and forth, and we're adding a little arts, a little culture. And the best way I could think to do that was to start a movie of the night. And I want to thank George Hahn for giving me this idea. And tonight's film, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Film noir-esque, starring Robert Downey Jr. and his triumphant return to the A-list of Hollywood back in 2005. Larry Miller, if you folks don't know Larry Miller, you're probably too young. An absolutely hilarious man. And Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer in one of his finest roles since he played Doc Holliday in Tombstone. Fabulous. Val killed it in that film. So, check it out. I believe Michelle Monaghan, is that her name? If I got it right. My goodness, what a beautiful woman. Even today, that was 20 years ago. And she was, 35-ish then? So she'd be in her mid-50s now? One of the most elegantly beautiful women out there. So check it out. Comment. Go to my Instagram page. Go to Threads. Magnolia John 2024. Magnolia John 2024. Please follow me there. We do daily lives. I do daily lives. Miss Courtney is going to set hers up. She's going to start doing daily lives, especially from the office. And we're just going to kind of go from there. Cool? All right then. Well, with that being said, this has been a very, very short episode. Again, if you want to support this content, the only liberal, left-of-center news organization that's not going to lie to you, but again, we are a little subjective because we want to see a progressive future for America, then support us by going to patreon.com/Magnolia Media Network. It's $5. We get to 500. You guys get to go behind the wall. You guys get to know the real John just a little bit. The real Courtney, as we are able to speak freely, not worry about, being too coarse, and just let it all hang out. You'll also get to meet us. So please do that as we represent the South's only liberal podcast, liberal news agency, liberal news network, progressive more than liberal. And again, it's a little different here than it is anywhere else because we're in the southeastern United States, and frankly, it's sort of a dangerous job, especially if we really catch on. I want this to work. Please help me make this work by going to patreon.com/Magnolia Media Network because I believe the country needs this, but I can only do it so long without your support. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in to the Magnolia Media Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Jonathan M. Ruggiero. Until next time, be well.